From the CISO Series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
Deepfake attack targets Whiz CEO. BlackBasta leverages Microsoft Teams, and Change Healthcare data breach is the largest ever. Hold on. Am I getting any audio back in, Steve? I heard the intro again. Should I just start from the top? Hold on. I may have another window open. I apologize. I had the I had YouTube open on my end. That's my fault. So we're going to go right from the top. I was hearing myself back again, and let's go. So I'll kind of send Steve, and we'll just start from the top. Apologize, everybody. Professionals at work here. 3, 2, 1. Deepfake attack targets Whiz CEO. BlackBasta leverages Microsoft Teams, and Change Healthcare data breach is the largest ever in U.S. healthcare history. These are some of the stories that my colleagues and I have selected from this past week's cybersecurity headlines. And now we're ready for some insight, opinion, and expertise from our returning guest, joining the Three-Timer Club, David Cross, SVP and CISO over at Oracle. David, thanks for being on the show. Got to ask first, before we jump into the news, how was your week in cybersecurity?
It was a great week. Certainly this week, I was at the Blue Hat Conference at Microsoft for a couple of days. So great connecting with the community. And that's so very important, I think, as us working together against the common enemy.
Absolutely, definitely one of the messages I think that resonates here with a lot of the stories that we're going to be talking about today, especially. Before we jump into those stories, though, I have to thank our sponsor for today, Drop Zone AI. Reinforce your SOC with AI analysts. Remember to join us on YouTube Live. Do so. Go to CISOseries.com. Hit that events drop down and look for that cybersecurity headlines week in review image. If you click on it, you're going to join us, and you can join some of the great people that we have in our chat. Kevin Farrell celebrating Change Healthcare being number one. CCL is in there. We have Ant Zung in there. Appreciate more hard to pronounce usernames. Please, always makes my day. Before I jump into the news, though, and we enjoy some of these great comments here, just a quick reminder that David's opinions here are his own, not necessarily those of his employer or anyone else. We love David and we love his expertise, so we can't wait to get that. We've got about 20 minutes. Let's jump into the news. Deepfake attack targets Whiz CEO. Speaking at TechCrunch Disrupt, Whiz CEO Asaf Rappaport shared that his employees were recently targeted in a deepfake attack just a couple of weeks ago. The attack involved voice messages that sounded like Rappaport attempting to get credentials from employees. But the red flags quickly popped up. Particularly just anyone asking you for your credentials probably should be one in general. But the audio was cloned from a public speaking event where Rappaport was speaking. And since he admits to dealing with public speaking anxiety, didn't exactly meet the day-to-day voice that employees had come to expect. Company officials say they've traced the origin of the voice, but have yet to determine who was behind the attack. So, David, I think an interesting story here because it highlights the gap that exists between real people and their mannerisms versus material generated through AI, or at least what can be replicated at this point. This kind of security is only, it has a limited half-life, though, and it won't be long before AI replicates people's unique mannerisms, or everyone just has a giant digital footprint out there that you have more just background to clone on. I'm curious, what direction should people move to take to stay vigilant against this kind of suspicious activity as deepfakes continue to improve?
I think it's a good question. Certainly, there's a limit. I know Asaf. I've known him for a number of years, and people know he's very unique. So not that easy to replicate, just like yourself, Rich, not that easy to replicate, but AI is getting good. But I think the reality is, and thinking about it, is that this is going to occur. And if you're just relying upon a voice or a Zoom session or things like that to any kind of a security control, you're going to get attacked, right? And it's going to be the end. And so you need to have the additional controls in place. And that's what's most important. We can't rely upon the phone calls anymore to make decisions.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. If you take away the systemic possibility that a call from the CEO can lead to data immediately without any other kind of, hey, give me your whatever, some other sort of factor or some other control in there, some sort of chain in there. Yeah, I feel like we're already at the point where it's irresponsible to do that outside of the, hey, this seems fishy, and that's going to come to light. I mean, do you is, is that an easy enough I say that knowing we have MFA fails later on in the show, but is that I guess straightforward enough that we can expect most organizations to be able to implement that, like, before this is available at scale, or even at more of a scale?
Well, one way I like to also think about it's not just about multi-factors, like, oh yes, you did multi-factor, things like that, but it's actually you need to have multiple multi-factors. It's it's not just that, hey, I know the password or I've got a token or things like that, but it's more of like, oh, do you have your ID? Do you have a government ID? Do you have an employee ID? All these type of other things. The reality is that's what we have to have now. It's not a simple case anymore.
And CCL in the chat says, poison those publicly available videos of your CEO. I mean, sure. I mean, maybe there's something you could do there, but I mean, someone could just tape him at that Disrupt conference, and then suddenly you have audio of him. So yeah, maybe that's a way to avoid high quality media that's out there. But I think, yeah, David, to your point, I think that's clearly the way organizations need to go. Next up here, BlackBasta leverages Microsoft Teams. Researchers at ReliaQuest report that BlackBasta ransomware affiliates have switched tactics. They're now using Microsoft Teams, I mean, Slack can't get any love, to gain initial access to target networks by impersonating IT support. By overwhelming employees with spam emails and then posing as help desk personnel on Teams, the attackers attempt to trick users into downloading remote monitoring tools like AnyDesk. In recent incidents, they have also incorporated malicious QR codes into their communications. Good old quishing continues to be the scourge of the internet. The report highlights a significant increase in message volume. One user said they received around 1,000 emails in just under an hour, which I believe qualifies as a hellscape, according to Merriam-Webster. So, David, in this case, we are seeing bad actors putting pressure on employees using a technique similar to what a 3-year-old might do. Make enough noise and until they get what they want. I'm curious, is this a good time for organizations to reconsider how to create an environment where employees do not feel pressure to respond to every email, or maybe that in itself should raise a couple of red flags? What's the takeaway here?
Well, I think one of the takeaways that I come back to mentioning Blue Hat, at the conference this week, and certainly Rachel, from the Microsoft Threat Intelligence Center, right, talking about how some of the attackers, especially the ransomware, are kind of changing their tactics. We kind of got used to don't open the attachments. Now they're having links and other ones. And, BlackBasta is one of the hardcore out there. That means they're going to continue to adapt. The real question is, how do we evolve, as organizations and with that? And I think that I don't want to, say it, but many people are saying people need more training, right? To know that of once a year, great, I had my phishing training, my compliance training, my ethics training, right? But really, is that enough, right? To say, here's the latest techniques that's going to be used for phishing and not being aware of it? I don't know. Is more training the answer? Not sure. But at the same time, how do we keep people aware in more of a real-time perspective?
Yeah, that is... we're seeing a realization of that. I don't think there's yet any agreement exactly what obviously, like, yes, context is important. Real as close to real time as important. Getting that mean time as close to the incident as possible is always the tricky part here. But I think we are seeing, at least from the conversations I'm hearing on CISO Series and Defense in Depth and stuff like that, that realization, the implementation will follow if the will is there, is what I'm hoping, right?
Yeah, it's also, I think was that we have a Moose Ernie here kind of says, same thing, that can you block the advance of AI to crack these safeguards? Another time is that AI is not just for the attackers, AI is for the defenders, right? And there's the element is that as we have better and better AI, whether it's in the browser, it's in email, it's in Teams and Slack and Zoom, and saying that the AI detecting, hey, this is unusual, there's anomaly, is that don't click this, don't listen to this, don't take this call. And I think we'll see that equal, horse race, progression, on the defender side. And AI is probably there to help us just as much as it is to help the attackers.
Yeah, that makes it incumbent on us to figure out ways to utilize these in a safe and responsible way, because the threat actors will just throw whatever works, and they are not as beholden to the red tape as much as companies are. All right, next up here, Five Eyes launches startup security program. Last year, the UK's GCHQ National Cybersecurity Centre and MI5's National Protective Security Authority launched Secure Innovation, a program designed to help secure tech startups from state backed threats. After the first ever public meeting of the heads of the Five Eyes domestic intelligence agencies, the UK, US, Canada, New Zealand, and Australian governments agreed to launch similar regionalized versions. Secure Innovation provides basic advice on protecting technology using simple questions to create a personalized action plan. So, David, it's good to see international bodies like this work together. But as CISO, how do these collaborate with practices that you would undertake internally? I guess where are a lot of startups are on their cybersecurity journey? Are these too basic to be useful, or is this, hey, you need to start thinking about cybersecurity now?
Honestly, on this one, it made me really think about the NSA's, their cybersecurity collaboration center, right? Because not all businesses and organizations can have the cybersecurity experts or threat intelligence and others, and they need help, right? They just
Mhm.
because they're too small. And this made me think about that. Think of startups. Yep, startups. Yep, they have funding and things like that. But do they have all the money, the expertise, and the ability to hire everyone to think about everything at the start? A lot of them don't. And so maybe this is a way to kind of help them early on, because I think we can all think of some good cases, or I say bad cases, where, hey, here's a security startup or here's a security product out there. And oh, that's why we got owned, not by the traditional things. And they need help just as much as everyone else. And maybe this is a great opportunity to see that happen.
All right. Well, before we move on, we want to spend a few moments and thank our sponsor for today, DropZone AI. Your SOC needs to be efficient, not overwhelmed. DropZone AI automates alert investigation, reducing manual effort by 90% and delivering clear, actionable reports. Learn how they can transform your SOC. Visit DropZone AI to schedule a demo today. That's DropZone.ai. Russia might fork the Linux community. In a statement to local media, the Russian digital ministry said it plans to create an alternative structure and an independent development community around Linux. This statement came after the Linux community delisted 11 Russian kernel maintainers, later explaining that it would add restrictions to developers whose companies are controlled by anyone named on the U.S. Office of Foreign Asset Control. Russia called this an act of discrimination. So, David, how serious is this in kind of the wider open source community? Obviously, not satisfied with suing Google for, all of the money. It's going to take its Linux code and do what it did with its railways, create a different gauge that no one else can use. I guess from a Linux open source we were talking about before the show is so critical to so much IT infrastructure. How serious would this kind of fork be?
Well, Rich, I take it as seriously as that every time you talk about your forking and creating your own build of Linux, right? So it's like China and Russia, kind of keep saying this again and again. Those same countries. Is that a coincidence? I don't know. But it seems like they keep doing this again and again. But the reality is of who's going to adopt it is enough market, right? And for that. It's like, okay, I'm only going to start writing apps for that specific distribution with all these different additional restrictions and things. The market in the economy just doesn't work. So let's go back a little bit to the days of name your favorite Bavarian city says, nope, we're getting rid of Windows and Office, right? We're going to Linux and Opera and Libra. How well did that work out, everybody, right? I'll let you judge for yourself.
We're still waiting for the year of Linux on the desktop, if that's any help for anybody. So, yeah. So is this just purely symbolic, or is this is this always the precursor to, hey, we're gonna Russia's been and very vocal about, hey, wanting to do their own domestic internet and stuff like that. Is this just a, hey, we're willing to take our ball and go home, or is this just, hey, we're gonna start putting up more firewalls to prevent outside collaboration, using this as a pretext for the things they're already doing?
I just see it's political. It's about what's going on in the world. It's number of things when there's sanctions and other things, and this is what happens, right? But the reality is, we're a global economy, despite sanctions and other things, and it's got to be a larger world to be successful. Otherwise, if there's no money in it for vendors and products, no one's going to adopt it.
Yeah. And Moose Ernie, to answer your question, yes, definitely. This is political at its start, and probably will continue to be so. I mean, as soon as OFAC gets involved, it's definitely in the realm of politics. Next up here, Change Healthcare data breach confirmed as largest ever in U.S. healthcare history. Kevin Farrell was raising the flag to this earlier. United Health Group, excuse me, has confirmed that more than 100 million individuals were impacted during the ransomware attack on its subsidiary Change Healthcare in February, making it the largest known digital theft of U.S. medical records in history. UHG's CEO confirmed cybercriminals broke into employee systems using stolen credentials that were not protected with multi-factor authentication. The ramifications are likely to be lifelong for the millions of Americans, myself included, whose private medical information was exposed. So, David, I'm not no big city lawyer, but the fact that the theft was due to the absence of MFA sounds to me like negligence by, I don't know, most definitions. The class action lawsuit machine, of course, is already in high gear, but given the lasting impact on at least a third of the U.S. population, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not a lawyer and don't have a JD either, but the element is, let's be the broken record, like it's like, Ann Johnson from Microsoft. It's like, hey, MFA, everybody, MFA, right? And when are we going to move to a world that everyone has to have MFA or else? And that's part of the reality. That's one thing. Now, there's another element is like, healthcare, everything is becoming like a SaaS, a software as a service.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I think that recently is I'm a member of the IT ISAC, the critical SaaS special interest group. And we just put out a paper this week, about understanding the shared responsibilities. And part of this is about organizations for people to look at various providers, their application providers, and saying, hey, are they doing everything I'm expecting them to and I need them to do? Oh, they're not using MFA? Is that really who I want to use as my application or service provider? And how do you evaluate that? How do you understand? How do you ask those questions? And I think that's something that we all need to start looking across the industry and making choices about and helping people to know what they need to ask. Is like, does my car have satellite radio, or not, right? I want to know before I make a purchase.
Yeah, it's interesting. It reminds me a lot of kind of the conversations that were happening when the first couple of rounds of digital transformation were happening. I was in more generalized IT media at the time, and I remember there was a lot of these discussions of the cloud will just take care of all my replication and all my backup and all of this stuff, and not realizing actually what the risk model was that you were signing on to, what was incumbent on you to take care of, and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it kind of those growing pains again happening again with kind of an industry at large with SaaS at the same time is really interesting. I mean, the good news is, again, we never solve things, but things get better over time. Does that help the 100 million people? Not really. And Moose Ernie in the chat does have a question. Can the public sue companies for not having MFA? I mean, I know there are some class action lawsuits. I don't think it's specifically around MFA. It's more around the data leak stuff. Specific. I don't know where the legal dominoes fall, but I'm sure if you've been impacted, you'll get a mailer from somebody that wants you to sign on for something, and some lawyers will get paid. Is the thing I can guarantee out of all of this, which is the best case scenario.
Maybe there could be a world in the future, like today, say that, hey, a company, hey, do you support TLS 1.2 or 1.3? Like, I want to know that, things like it's critical. The same things like, are you using MFA or not? I want to know that, right? And make it upfront so you can make great decisions.
Yeah. Although the idea, like I can barely figure out what my insurance covers, let alone whether my healthcare provider is using MFA or TLS 1.4 or something like that. So I feel for the consumers because it does put them, but even for healthcare where they don't have more specialized staff, like or in a lot of cases or the same scale, it is a tough road to hoe. And so hopefully we can have standards that are out there to make, to not put so much burden on them to have a basic level of service and security that they can hit over time. But I have a feeling we'll be talking about the follow-on to this for years to come. So thanks for that question, Moose Ernie. And I think our last story for today, CISA launches international cybersecurity plan. This is the first for CISA, this plan setting out goals to bolster the resilience of foreign infrastructure. The plan calls for working with partners to strengthen integrated cyber defenses, including steering international bodies and NGOs to adopt secure by design principles. That seems to be the buzzword that the U.S. is really kind of hammering on in the last couple of weeks here. We've heard or months. We've heard a lot about secure by design here. CISA has always kept itself busy launching plans and programs to better cybersecurity, and good for them for doing that. They take it seems like they take that mission very seriously and very practically. Thinking back to the Five Eyes stories, though, David, and given that the U.S. is one of those Five Eyes, I'm curious, how do these initiatives complement each other?
Well, I think it's important. I think for one, I'll give you the positive and negative view of this. Is there's one is that the reality is like in the United States is that can everything be built and manufactured, the entire supply chain for everything in the United States? That's not realistic. As I mentioned before today, it's a global world, a global economy. We're going to have dependencies, various places in the supply chain in everything that we do from a software and a hardware perspective, from an infrastructure perspective. And so I think we need to have that common interest of make things better. Is like buying toys and plugs and devices. Yep, we want to make sure that they're not going to blow up in the power outlet of our homes. Same thing, I think, for security and software. But at the same time, is that I think is that with these benefits is that I get nervous about too many regulations, right? I think like GDPR was a good one. It affected the whole world and then became adopted. But let's say if every country in the world has their unique regulations, how many people can read that and not just die from fatigue and misunderstanding, all of those?
Well, we have our AI, so we can just plug
Mm.
all the laws into there, and it'll tell us how we can be compliant now. But yeah, the if you haven't had a chance to look at some of the details on this international agreement, anyone listening, definitely check it out in our show notes. We have some links to at least some of the coverage on there. You can get into the details as much as you want. Yeah, what I think is really interesting is literally like one of the first steps is like figuring out where our critical, where in the supply chain different international partners are that that need to be secured, and like start those conversations. I think is like, yes, obviously in some cases those conversations are already ongoing, and we should all hope so, but like just formalizing even that kind of basic stuff, and then kind of moving on into more international standards and stuff like that. It seems the good thing is it doesn't seem very prescriptive. It seems like, hey, let's formalize how we're going to discover this stuff. And I think when we get into regulations that become too prescriptive, and especially when we have multiple competing ones, that compliance might be impossible in a lot of cases. I completely agree with you. That doesn't help anybody. That just kind of adds to burdens for companies that are already having a tough time with it. All right. Well, before we get out of here, I just want to thank everybody for getting in on the chat. We have CCL, we had Moose Ernie with first timer, I think, in the chat participating here. We had Kevin Farrell, we had the big boss man, David Spark himself, and over on LinkedIn, we had Gladmir Castro getting in there just at the last second, confirming yes, sue companies for not having MFA. I don't know if Mr. Castro is a lawyer. Check out his LinkedIn profile, I guess. That would be my first advice. Before we get out of here, David, was there any story that was a thumbs up or an eye roller for you in this lineup, or just in the news of the week in general?
Oh, the eye roller. I think there was so much. Certainly now that one company being sued for billions of dollars or things like that, certainly the bounty programs and other things. And I have to admit, the other one is that Cisco having hard code passwords for things and devices. That one still kind of stings a little, as long as I've known that company.
Yeah, that's about as low hanging a fruit as you can think of. It seems like they have familiarity with that kind of stuff, but yeah, that was not a great one. If you missed that, make sure you check out cybersecurity headlines. If you're not catching it every single day, it really does help you keep caught up on all of this news. So we always appreciate everybody listening. And David Cross, CISO and SVP over at Oracle, thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people find you on the cyberspace if they want to check you out?
You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find my travel blog, davidcross, travels.com. And so I'm working, here on the comments, because that's how you get into the show, everybody, is having lots of comments, so you can eventually get to 5 and have your, Saturday Night Live. I mean, the CISO series,
yes,
kind of
thank you.
jacket,
Yeah, you'll get a teal jacket with the logo here. I'm showing it on the video there. And we also have a link to your paper with IT ISAC in our show notes as well. So if you want to check that out, make sure you look at our show notes. So thank you once again, David. Always a pleasure to have you on. I cannot wait to have you on again.
Likewise.
And thanks also to our sponsor for today, DropZone AI. Reinforce your SOC with AI analysts. Thanks again to all of our commenters today. We can't get everything up on the screen. TJ Williams, I saw you getting in there late, but rest assured, all of them help make the show better. They help keep us informed on what's of interest to you, where your mind is, and where your thoughts are on these stories. That always helps make the show better, and it is a lot of fun to see them each and every week. Make sure you come back next week for another episode of Super Cyber Friday, where the topic will be that this may seem relevant to you, hacking MFA, an hour of critical thinking about how threat actors circumvent this mainstay of authentication. Coincidence? I think not. We'll also be back next week with another episode of the Weekend Review. And in the meantime, you still get your daily news fix. I alluded to it earlier, but cybersecurity headlines every single day. Give us 6 minutes. We'll get you all caught up. Until the next time we meet, I'm Rich Stroffolino, reminding you to have a super sparkly day.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOSeries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.